Welcome everyone to Bitcoin Expat Stories. With me tonight, I have a good friend of mine, my roommate, and a lifelong business partner, Tristan Borges Solari. How are you, Tristan?
Hi, Gustavo. Feeling great. Thanks for having me here on your pod. Can't complain, man. Living the good life in Mexico.
Yeah, weather's pretty good.
Oh, man. Always the same. Always good.
Always 26 during the day, 15 at night.
Uh-huh.
Get a little breeze to bounce off, right?
Yeah, definitely. Very happy to have made the move here. I mean, you know as well as I do, we tried quite a few places before establishing here in Querétaro. Definitely one of the best regions I've lived in so far. I mean, tough to beat Montreal during the summer, but it's pretty much the only time of the year where it's livable and people aren't as intense, let's put it this way. But
What do you mean by intense?
well, I mean, first and foremost, left the country. It's 2 years now. So after going through a winter or so of, let's call them, government, crazy government measures, got fed up, was going insane, couldn't focus on my work. So the winters were particularly, I mean, other than the weather, which is already pretty brutal, just the quality of living was deteriorating very rapidly. So had to get the heck out of there as quickly as possible. Yeah, I mean, it helped escaping the winter a few times, going down to Mexico in Playa del Carmen with buddies of mine, including Maciek. Went back there later on with you. And then, I mean, just after spending a couple of months in Mexico, I think pretty much fell in love. And then once we were back in Montreal during the summer, that's when we started planning out, our escape, so to speak. And I mean, got acqui-hired by Bull Bitcoin, so that was a wonderful opportunity to leave the country again. And I mean, that pretty much set us off. Before that, spent about a month in Costa Rica, getting the lay of the land, connecting more with Francis Pouliot. Had a wonderful time there. And then it was off back to Mexico, actually. Yeah, because we were on our way to the Bitcoin 21 conference, but we had a month to spare, so went back to a place that we enjoyed very much. Less so now. Playa del Carmen is fun for a weekend, but more than that, you kind of get tired of it since it's a party central. Prices are a bit more expensive. A lot of tourists from around the world that are there too that don't have the same kind of vibe as I do. But overall, I mean, it was just nice being out of Canada.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. Well, I've lived the same experience and I felt the same. Obviously, we miss our friends and family, and we do miss a bit of the culture there, but it's time to look forward rather than backwards. So before we get into all the details about your Mexican experience, I know you already started sharing a bit, which I'm grateful for. But just give us a bit background about yourself. How can you describe your upbringing? What do you do for a living? And just tell us whatever you want about yourself.
Sure. I mean, born and raised in Montreal. My mom immigrated from Portugal. My dad was born from Italian migrants that ended up in Montreal after the Second World War. Then, pretty classic education, high school, college, whatnot. Studied in finance in university, but regretfully, I felt, looking back, it was a big waste of time.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, I met some cool people, friends that I still have to this day, but the educational experience was just not worth it. I mean, at the same time, luckily for me, that's when I also started going down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Well, maybe a year or so before, but not very seriously, more exploratory.
Right.
Touched the whole trading scene and whatnot, but I'm a terrible trader. Learned a lot of hard lessons there, but still had that bite, I guess, from the whole Bitcoin experience that I wanted to keep digging into. That's where we dove in, well, myself, you included, and a couple of other close friends, including Maciek. We dove into mining, which was a crazy ride. Probably one of the first, like, definitely a forming experience in the sense that, I've never really done business, in a proper sense. I was always learning about it, but never got my hands dirty, other than like jobs and whatnot. But actually dealing with people that, they'll smile at you, they'll say nice things, but then you turn around and they stab you in the back just to get more money out of you. I mean,
Are you talking about like contractors and
that was the whole mining thing? Because I mean, we're not
industry. Electricians.
None of us were engineers or had any idea before that of how to deal with like hardware at scale. Which we all learned eventually, and I mean, I don't regret this experience at all, but it definitely opened my eyes to like how other people deal with me and how I want to deal with other people, and it really shaped the way I negotiate my dealings. Just because I got to cover my ass, and I always prefer deals that are win-win for everyone, not just me that's being taken for granted. So the mine worked for a little bit, but then we hit obvious roadblocks being based in Quebec, with the whole moratorium and whatnot. So
right,
that was another, eye-opening experience, because you can have a great business idea, but if the government doesn't want you to operate, they will do everything they can to stop you, especially if you're not a big enough player. From then on, I didn't lose hope, stayed motivated, and that's where I co-founded Veriphi. Initially, it was a research firm, and we did consulting. That's where I got my writing experience in the beginning. Had a lot of fun doing that. But then again, with the whole government measures in the past few years, couldn't do consultation anymore because we're doing a lot of self-custody stuff.
We were doing a lot of in-person stuff with
exactly.
the consultancy and the meetup, so that changed it.
Yeah, and I mean, people were approaching us after reading our articles for a while, and they really wanted an in-person presence because we're dealing with very sensitive information, and over the phone or video it feels a little bit impersonal, especially when it's clients that have large amounts of Bitcoin. They would rather have you there in person just to make sure.
For sure, like I can just add that, like from our experience, it has been very clear that people prefer to have a in-person contact with you, and then to do the workshop together for you to make sure they don't screw up.
Exactly. Feel much more comfortable, right? So we pivoted, and through our connections and current knowledge, and I mean, we were always meeting new, very smart individuals that liked us, that wanted to work with us, and it kind of all came together around a non-custodial Bitcoin-only exchange. So Veriphi pivoted to that. I was doing like the operation side of things, dealing with the customer experience, some admin stuff, banking relations and whatnot.
Design too, no?
Yeah, and that's kind of where I got into design. I studied that for about a year, and I started doing like the mock-ups for new features and images and graphic design stuff. I still do that to this day. I find it really fun, and it's always evolving, so just figuring out ways to solve problems creatively. It's always something that will be in demand, and then eventually got acqui-hired by Bull Bitcoin. Over there was mostly working on the bitcoinsupport.com website and platform, so where users can purchase pre-designed self-custody kits that I helped develop largely. Did all the documentation there. We're helping a lot of customers on the calls with the self-custody and whatnot. All of this really to drive more customers towards Bull Bitcoin, since they are non-custodial. And from then on, I wanted to try other things, kind of tired with the whole experience of, not tired, but I mean, I learned a lot, but it was just not the right fit for me. So now doing mostly freelance writing, technical writing, still doing design work, working with you and Maciek on your own projects, helping out where I can, and participating in the organization of the Bitcoin Querétaro meetups.
Right.
It's kind of like a...
Yeah, so let me just wrap up to see if if the people listening got the full picture. So you would say that your focus is, first of all, in customer support, so helping out customers use a platform. For example, in the Veriphi's case, it was the non-custodial Bitcoin exchange, and in bitcoinsupport.com was workshops around self-custody. That's the first part. The second part would be technical writing, which is communicating complex topics to just regular crowds that want to learn more about something, so very vulgarization.
Right.
And third would be illustrations and designs to make it, to either communicate brand value or just a marketing message or a user experience to a customer as well.
Yeah,
is that it?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Great. All right. So before we go on into, so today we're going to talk about two topics mainly. The first one's going to be about Mexico, and the second one's going to be about the latest work you've been doing around the Coldcard and other Coinkite technologies, where you explain how they work. So first of all, let's begin. You've already started talking about a few of the places you've been, such as Costa Rica and Playa del Carmen. But now I want to hear about the other places we've traveled together. So I know, but I want people to hear it, right? So how can you compare San Miguel de Allende, Querétaro, Vallarta, other places? Because people know about Cancun, about Playa. People even know about Costa Rica. I want to know about the places you've been. Mexico City, Puebla, Guadalajara, Mexico State. What are the differences? What are the things you like the most? What are the things you didn't like? Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I can start with definitely one of my favorite places being San Miguel de Allende. Spent almost 2 months there. It's in Mexico, there's a categorization of towns called, they get the label of being magic or Pueblo Mágico. San Miguel, I think, has actually surpassed that. Like, it's so good that it's not even in that ranking or category anymore. It's just like above. The reason being is that, I mean, it's, first of all, it's just super beautiful, very clean. The people are kind and welcoming. Very calm. I mean, it's situated in Guanajuato, which is a state that you need to be wary when you go around. But overall, that city is very safe. The streets are lined with castle walls, and behind those walls you have a bunch of different little homes that open up and that are just super charming.
I just want to say the place we had when we were in San Miguel was like a castle. Well, it was not a castle, but it was kind of like a fortress, you know. So like they're not built independently; they're built like separate, like right next to each other. But the walls are so thick and so big, you know, and it's such a good experience.
Yeah, definitely very tough to get around those walls. The main criticism, I'd say, is that the average age of the population is much higher than mine. Most residents there, or a large part of residents there, are retired. So, I mean, it's very calm. It's a great place to work during the week. You don't really have that many distractions. On the other hand, on the weekend, you have a lot of visitors from other towns nearby, like Mexico City, Guadalajara, Querétaro, and whatnot, that go mostly for the nightlife. So it does have that entertainment aspect, but it's very ephemeral. Not the best place for me to make, I would say, longer-term connections of people around my generation, or at least much more difficult.
Right.
Also, I guess a lot of the younger people there are more in like the artistic fields, which is great. I'm coming from Montreal. I mean, I'm very well aware of that kind of vibe, and I'm happy with it. But again, with the work that I'm doing, it's a bit more difficult to connect, especially when it's about technical stuff like Bitcoin.
For sure, very artistic. You know, visual arts, like fashion design,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
And it very out there. Let's put it like that. You have a variety of communities there that push the envelope a little bit. So it's not always people that I can relate with either. But I mean, overall, man, you want to live there, you want to build a family there. I highly recommend it.
It's a nice place.
Mm-hmm.
What other place you highly recommend?
Guadalajara is a lot of fun. It reminded me a lot of Montreal in the sense you have a lot of like cool little bars and cafes. And I mean, the people there are quite good looking as well. Like in Montreal, except, you know, different culture, different morals, values, and whatnot.
Right.
But definitely a great place to visit and even to live in. Bit more dangerous. You can't really. I mean, Mexico in general, it's not. I never recommend showing off, flaunting your wealth or whatnot. Always stay humble.
For sure.
People in general are humble. And you wouldn't even know that they have a lot of wealth because they look like a regular Joe, you know. I've seen ranchers in Malinalco, another great place I visited, and
very good place.
Yeah, super beautiful, surrounded by mountains. The air is fantastic, the food is great, everything's from the land, and the community is very tightly knit. Contrary to like Guadalajara, where it's a very big city. A lot of traffic also, that's like not as great. The air quality is not always fantastic. But overall, Guadalajara, great place to be. Malinalco, again, really enjoyed it. I'd say you have a lot of big properties there, a lot of ranches, and people with a lot of, you know, assets and access to natural resources that you can never tell otherwise, just because they act, talk, walk, you know, drink, eat like everybody else, which is cool. You know, everyone's very tightly knit. Big difference too is that you know, being a smaller community, they fend for one another. So all the ranchers, all the citizens living there are well equipped to defend themselves.
For sure. And they have the local police on their side as well. You know,
exactly.
Everyone's together there. It's mostly against foreign threats, other towns, cartels, I talked about this with Maciek in the first episode of this podcast. Okay, so one question I had for you is what then, like you talk about San Miguel and Guadalajara and Malinalco as places you really liked. Anything you didn't like? Any place you wouldn't go back to?
Probably Playa del Carmen or Cancun. Not the best places in my opinion. Too touristy, not very authentic. The food is not the best.
Pretty bad food.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to go to the beach, Puerto Vallarta is nice. It's already more family oriented. Again, it's still very touristy, but if you go up north, you have the state of Nayarit, and you have a few gems there. Spent a bit of time in Sayulita. Very cool, but again, more touristy.
And you gotta watch out. You cannot just swim directly on the Sayulita beach. You gotta find like other beaches that are like 10, 15, 20 minutes walk.
Yeah.
Because the Sayulita beach is extremely disgusting.
Yeah, it's water management, water disposal, waste, whatnot is not the best. But you definitely have, I think there's one place called El Punto, something like that, in near Sayulita, where you have a lot of large mansions and whatnot, and the beaches are
Punta Mita?
Punta Mita, there you go.
Yeah. Where the Four Seasons is, owned by Bill Gates. Yeah. That's like the richest spot in Mexico as a beach, right? Okay, that's cool. So now that we've kind of covered what you like about Mexico, the places you've been to or not, can you compare like Mexico to Montreal or to Europe? You're Portuguese, so you've been to Portugal. I just want to know what differences can you point out for the listeners that have never been here, have not lived here, because it's one thing to go to Playa, it's another thing to live here. So as your experience of living here, how would you compare it to Montreal and Portugal and Europe as in general, culturally, nightlife, dating, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's a lot of similarities across the board, in the sense that, it's all Catholic regions, so they perceive alcohol and kind of relationships in the same way. But the main differences, I would say, especially between Canada and like Mexico, and even Europe, is, and let's say from my point of view, so I'm 26. People my age around me are much more socially conservative, I would say. Not all, of course, less so in the big cities in Mexico, but already they have much more faith in God or the religion than in Montreal. Much more respect for authority. Well, the authority being, their family, much closer to their family.
Much closer. That's the one that I would put an emphasis on. It's the closeness to the family. Seeing the family every weekend.
All the time. Family is the most important thing. You grow up with your brothers and sisters and cousins and second cousins and third cousins. Everyone is together for the most part. You always have cases where people turn against one another, but that's because of other factors like money or whatnot. It's beyond what we're talking about, I think. And unlike Montreal, where as soon as you're 18, well, less so now, but because it's just too expensive, but as soon as you're old enough and you want to move out, you want to get as far away as you can from your parents, even if you're living on the same island of Montreal as them, because you want to go out every night and party and, do your...
You want to be like... You think you want to be in... That's what being independent means.
Yeah, it's
like, I remember when I was that age, I wanted to move out because I thought that's what freedom was, which is not at all.
Doing whatever you want, but you don't really have any life experience, so you kind of just wander, sometimes aimlessly. But the difference being Montreal has a very strong artistic community, so a lot of people converge towards that, and that's where they find, where they recognize other people. At the same time, some of those conservative values fade away in exchange for more liberal ones, which I'm not saying is necessarily bad, but your approach to life is quite different.
For sure.
Here, people work really hard all the time. At least a lot of them do. Montreal, you kind of feel like... I don't want to generalize, because I have really good friends in Montreal too, and they don't fall under these statements necessarily, but you kind of feel like since you're in a first world country, you kind of deserve to have all of the amenities that come with it, without having to put in additional effort.
Entitlement,
yeah. So it definitely doesn't... The world doesn't work like that. We all start off like the basis of us as human beings are that we start off in poverty, and the goal is to work together to attain prosperity, and that's a continuous effort. It's not something that, okay, we're comfortable now, let's just let our leaders do whatever they want because we're not going to get any worse, right? We can't. We're Canadians. Things can't get bad for us. We're the model citizens of the world. Portugal, it depends where you go. I've traveled pretty much across the whole country. I've seen many cities in the north, in the center, and in the south. My mother and her family my mother was born in Braga, which is very much up north. And I went there a few times, and you rent a car and you can drive the whole country in like a day. It's tiny. And a lot of like little rural towns, kind of like in Mexico, like everywhere you go, there's like a town, unlike Canada where you need to travel quite a long distances before hitting other like cities or towns.
Like the towns in Quebec, for example, are so small. They're just like houses on on the side of the road with like a convenience store. It doesn't feel like a town. It just feels like a suburb of another town. Like, it just feels like people living in the woods. But here, and I guess in Portugal too, towns, even though there's like 1,000 people, you still feel an energy, right? Like, you still like can tell apart that town from the other town.
Right.
So Portugal's kind of the same.
Yeah, no, definitely. Quebec, the towns across Quebec, they all, for the most part, look like one another. In Portugal, you have, like in Mexico, each region has its own kind of subculture, which is cool. Older generations, I guess, well, people there already have, they seem more conservative, and they still hold on to older traditions, and also very hardworking people. I mean, and it's fantastic to live there too. The weather is pretty consistent throughout the year. You can go surfing, you can just go chill on the beach, or you can be inland. And then you also have the islands, the Azores, and whatnot. So different, yeah. I think I summed it up there.
Yeah, you did.
Again, cost of living in Portugal is still pretty low compared to the rest of Europe. Also, a lot of stuff is produced in Portugal. You have a lot of good stuff to eat and drink. And the people are overall very nice as well.
It seems to me that Portugal, amongst the European nations, or at least the Western European nations, will be the one that seems closest to like a Latin American country like Mexico. Is that a bit what you're saying?
Definitely. I mean, at least especially amongst the Latin countries in Europe, because I've been in Italy, I've been in France. And there, people, again, it depends in the region within those countries. Usually the distinction is between the north and the south. Yeah. Like the south of Italy might be a little bit closer to Mexico.
Yeah, I think so too.
But overall, yeah, the attitude is a little bit different. Portugal, yeah, I think Portugal is definitely the closest one.
Cool.
Culturally.
All right. So one thing you didn't mention was you talked about the culture and the nightlife, but what about dating? I know a lot of people that will move here just have questions about that. So I was wondering, how would you compare dating here as dating in other places? As much as you feel comfortable to share. Right. I know you had a girlfriend. So.
Yes. So very different. Montreal already is a very tough place to date in because yes, there are a lot of.
Is it though?
Okay, if you have money, that already helps. But just to say that Montreal people tend to be, no, I wouldn't say tend to be, but there is a bigger group, a bigger share of people that are much more attractive than everybody else compared to other places. And they tend to dominate the dating scene. So it's the theory, I think we spoke about this.
Yeah, we've spoken about this before. The theory that like the 10% of men get like the 90% of women.
Right.
But if I can just cut you there, what you're saying is in Montreal, in Mexico, you're considered part of that 10% most attractive, and not in Montreal.
Definitely. I mean, being a foreigner helps. Speaking French helps. I mean, well, it doesn't help, but I mean, it's definitely a big plus. Also, there is, how can I put this? The perception of Mexican men by Mexican women is already not that great in general, I would say.
Yeah, this is a very good point.
So there is a phenomena of like machismo, being macho, which, nothing against it. I think it's good to have that in part in your society. But when it's over the top, like it is sometimes here, you just pretty much end up having a lot of women that are traumatized from their past relationship with those kind of men. So it opens up a lot of doors for foreigners that are perceived as kinder or, just more suave, I guess. Not as rough around the edges, let's put it like that.
Yeah, for sure. Well, just not as controlling, possessive, some aggressive even,
Yeah, a lot of relationships seem to be controlling, either the man towards the woman or vice versa. I've heard a lot of toxic relationships here as well.
It seems that so many people have experience with toxic relationships here, way more than elsewhere. But maybe that's just my perception.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not the first time I hear that. I mean, here it's not that complicated, man. Like, you just act normal. Well, act yourself. Don't be rude. Smile, and I mean, you already have half the work done. Because then, I mean, if you have other traits that'll distinguish you from Mexicans, again, it depends where in Mexico, because the demographics change between the north and the south of the country.
Yeah, for sure. We generalize, but it's such a big country. It's so different between the different regions, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, dating here, I mean, it's been fun. But, I mean, now I settled down. I found a girl that I'm very much in love with. So, happy about that. But for the guys out there that want to date in Mexico, learn how to dance. That can be very helpful.
Yeah, for
or
sure.
If you don't, man, just go up to the girl and say you don't know, and she'll teach you. It's also the easiest.
Because everyone knows how to dance here. Everyone knows how to sing too.
Yeah, that's it. Very big difference that I noticed is when you go out here in Mexico, people give it their all, man. Like, when it comes to drinking, singing, dancing, party is like a real event, man.
It's the main hobby.
Yeah, it's the main hobby. I mean, you work so much, you don't really have energy to do anything else.
It's basically the only hobby. People have the same hobby schedule. Like, they work till Friday p.m. Very late, like let's say 7-8 p.m. and then they'll go out, and then the Saturday morning they'll all go eat the same thing, birria or just tacos with a beer too, and then they'll restart the party on Saturday all night, and then on Sunday they'll go for breakfast too, and they'll drink a bit too, and and everybody just does that, right? There's like a party routine that goes on every weekend that everybody just repeats. Yeah,
it rarely stops, man. I guess for a lot of people, that's it. Like you mentioned, people are working constantly, so partying and alcohol is a release. It's not necessarily, I don't think it's the best one, but I mean, it works for them for the time being. Also another thing about the macho-ness I was talking about. We were talking about this the other day by the fact that during the Mexican Revolution, you have a large percentage of the male population that was killed.
Yeah.
So
like 2 million.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is the younger boys and younger men were pretty much venerated by the mothers because they now had the responsibility to, lead the society, which was still, it has been and I think will be for a very long time be patriarchal. So they kind of became like, little princes in their eyes, and that kind of stuck in the culture. So men feel that they can pretty much do and get away with anything they want.
That's a theory, and I share that theory, but just to say that some people would disagree.
For sure. I mean, I'm not saying it applies to everyone, but it's interesting just to see how, how the perception of men and their perception of themselves has evolved in Mexico.
For sure. And I think something else that comes with a high casualty war where men are the ones that die, it's that there's like who's left? A lot of women and very little men. So like if you want to reproduce, a man has to reproduce with many women, right? And I think that's also a factor in this. When you have a war and a lot of men get wiped out, the remaining men have to have a lot of women because that's the way you're going to reproduce. Obviously, I'm assuming that this is the demographic national strategy, which has always been throughout history or almost. So, and I think that maybe has an impact too, because it just becomes normal for men to have multiple women. So like it becomes normal for them to do what they want, right?
Yeah, and that's still an ongoing phenomenon. What's the word for not playboy?
Mujeriego.
Mujeriego.
Yeah, it's like someone that has, but the Mexican men are different in the sense that they're from my experience in Montreal, it's that they're gonna make every girl fall in love rather than just like sleep around and like go on dates and date many women. They're really gonna make every girl fall in love. Every girl's gonna think she's the love of his life, and they're just gonna do that for a couple of women, right? Like, you remember when we went to I talked about this on the first podcast we had. My friend Maciek, which is one of our best friends, his girlfriend had a friend that got killed in Malinalco. His name was Rogelio, and we went to his funeral, or at least when the body was received into the town.
The procession.
And he had like 5 girls crying over him, and they were all claiming they were the girlfriend, or the wife, but none of them were, because that's what a mujeriego is. He makes them believe that they're all the main woman, when they obviously are not, right? So, okay, so let's move on to just a very quick answer on any travel plans, anything you want to do in the coming years regarding your travel expat experience.
Yeah, definitely at the top of my list is going back to El Salvador. I was there for adopting Bitcoin at the last one in 2022. Definitely an amazing experience. I love the country. The people there are so nice. The weather, it's humid. I mean, it's very hot, but you can live with that. Really had a great time there, meeting a lot of old friends and new ones. Definitely looking forward to the next one. Else around Mexico, definitely have a lot of places I want to visit, like Mazatlan. Curious to go check out Culiacan. See what the vibe there is about with the norteños and whatnot.
Just so many things about Culiacan, right? The narco culture, just a very strong state economically, not just in that sector. A lot of culture comes out of there, like a lot of music, a lot of food, different accent, different, like, people look different. They're taller, they're whiter, so many things about Sinaloa, but it's always funny to say it, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. What else? Merida seems like a cool place to visit. I want to see. I'm curious to discover more of. Well, I haven't been, but discover Chiapas.
Yeah, Chiapas looks interesting. It's definitely. It's the southest, the most southern state, so the closest to Guatemala's border, and it's like extremely native. So, but because it's extremely native, and because it's so deep south, it has an interesting climate and like a bit more jungly, but also like mountains and beaches. Like it's very interesting. It's very preserved as a state. It's not at all modernized. Very poor. So it has its bad sides, but as a tourist, it's a beautiful place. So I've heard, right?
Must have its charm. I've been in Puerto Escondido as well, but I'm imagining that's already much more developed compared to other regions of Chiapas.
No, it has nothing to do. Like Puerto Escondido is extremely developed, extremely
it's already a well-known place.
Yeah, it's a known place. It's a touristic American place. Every touristic place is like nothing compared to what really Chiapas is. So it depends. It's such a big place, so there's so many things, but there's a lot of poverty.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure we would be very shocked.
We're gonna stand out. What else? Baja California Sur. That's just. It looks like it's the best weather and the beaches in Mexico.
Yeah, I want to go there too.
The list goes on. Definitely have so much more to visit in central Mexico. The north. Hopefully one day, but right now I'm not really motivated to go check it out. It's definitely more risky. But
you're willing to go to Culiacan,
willing, but that's already the capital of.
But it's risky. Like they just arrested the Chaposon like 3 weeks ago, and there was
definitely you need to pick your moment.
It was a battle. Like, it was like being in a war zone. So
no, that's it.
For like 2 days.
2 days, yeah.
But still, you never know when you get caught in this. Like this would never happen here in Querétaro.
For sure.
Or in so many other places. But there, gotta watch out. Okay, cool. Well, thank you for that. That was very interesting. Your thoughts on Mexico and the specific cities, the culture, the dating scene, the nightlife. So now let's talk about your latest work, what you've been writing on. So maybe just introduce that quickly, and then we can go into the details about every article you've written about.
Happy to. So mostly been writing for lately I've been writing for Coinkite and a couple of other companies, but that's more marketing related, so a bit different from what I've been doing for these guys. Mostly, vulgarizing, doing what I know best, since I've been writing and vulgarizing stuff related to Bitcoin ever since Verify. So had an article that's published right now called Everything You Need to Know About Passphrase. So it's, a rundown of, a brief evolution of like how wallets have been developed and private key standards and whatnot. And then there's one about explaining the security architecture of the Coldcard Mk4. I might sound like a Coldcard and Coinkite chill, but they deliver some of the best products out there, especially if you want top-notch security solely dedicated to your Bitcoin. Can't really go wrong with them. Another one about entropy and how that's generated, and I have a few more in the pipeline that are gonna come out very soon, so just keep an eye out for their blog.
Nice. Okay, so I want to go into detail about these topics, but first I want you to, if you could, ask you if you could explain the difference between Coldcard and the other hardware wallets. Like, not in too much detail, just for the people that don't know much about Coldcard or even hardware wallets.
Okay.
What makes it the best? Because I agree, I think it's the best, but what makes it the best, and what are the differences with the main brands such as Trezor and Ledger, and maybe even others like Fountain?
Right. So I guess the biggest difference, other than the fact that it's Bitcoin only, but some other wallets out there are as well, is the fact that the latest model uses 2 secure elements instead of 1. So that is just to further distribute the risk tied to one secure element being compromised, as well as greatly increase the cost of attacking their device, because the way it's constructed is not only do you need to crack the microcontroller unit, which is basically a chip that organizes things in the device, acts like a little brain, if you will. It tells the lungs to breathe, just as a metaphor, let's say. Just like it says send this signal to this chip and whatnot. You need to crack that, the microcontroller or MCU. You need to crack the first secure element, and you need to crack a secondary secure element. Both are from different manufacturers. It's not impossible, nothing really is, but the likelihood of even breaching one is incredibly small, infinitely small. Because the way that they launched themselves is, hey, we're not happy with the current standards of hardware wallets in the market, and we want something to protect our Bitcoin according to our standards, and that's pretty much what they set themselves out to do. Trezor still a good hardware wallet. The main issue is not the main issue, but everything is very open source, and they use a microcontroller unit for the key storage.
But they don't have a secure element.
Right. So someone with physical access to the Trezor and enough technical skills and like $100 worth of hardware can extract your seed phrase. So the 12.
There's actually tutorials about it. So
right, you can look it
your
up.
PIN is useless if someone has access to that tutorial, they can just enter your device, bypassing your PIN, if they have physical access. Because I think the question really is about the physical access.
Right.
Because almost none of them you're able to hack with them through online, right?
Right, but
like that has basically never been a major point of difference between them.
No. I don't think I've seen any cases of a hardware wallet being cracked through malware on your computer because you plugged it to your computer. I'm not even sure if that's possible right now.
I've never seen that. I've seen things like you could believe you're sending a different amount. You know, those things, like they're little changes to your transaction. Like, you think you're sending testnet, but you're sending real coins.
Right.
Things like that. Or
they can manipulate like the change address.
Yeah, but even those things, I've never heard of a story where they've been hacked in real life. I've heard like those bags have been found, but they've been probably fixed before they were ever attacked. The hard wallet was ever compromised. I don't know. You know, there could be, but I've never heard of that.
Yeah. So I mean, even Coldcard, they've had their fair share of attacks. Like there was a laser fault injection in the Mk4, which uses a microchip 508A chip, if I'm not mistaken. So basically, and this was done by the team at Don John Ledger, so their research team. Basically, what they did is they cracked open, and all of this is not possible with like the Mk3 and so forth. But essentially, you crack open your hardware wallet case, the transparent case, and then you desolder the MCU from the board, and then using like a
MCU's microcontroller, right?
I'm sorry, the secure element from MCU's microcontroller, but you desolder the secure element from the board.
Okay.
And then you decapsulate it, meaning you have to shave off like a fraction of a millimeter gradually from the top of the chip to expose like the wiring basically. And then you point a $200,000 laser at it and you try and mess with like the interference in order to extract the pin. And
I think that
then you can like access, you can log into the Coldcard.
But it takes like days, right? And it costs like $500,000.
Takes a lot of time. You need a team of experts.
And it costs such a big amount of money, and it's no longer possible. So
already it was an unrealistic attack. To begin with, you really need to be like targeted by like these pro heist guys.
Yeah, exactly, like the CIA
it's a diamond
or like
hat,
Ledger Inc. You know, like
exactly.
very little, but maybe Raytheon.
It's an Ocean's 8 type of thing.
Okay. So if I got your answer, basically you're saying that the Mk4 provides not only a microcontroller like Trezor or Seed Signer, and not only one secure element like Ledger or even Fountain, but actually two secure elements.
Right.
So go a little bit more into detail about this process. So what is the function of each secure element? How can you tell a story of like when you're using the Coldcard, how is every different part used at which moment, and how do they connect with each other?
For sure. So kind of goes like this. Let's say you receive your Coldcard for the first time. It's in a plastic transparent bag with a random number on it, which is to identify the product in question. That same number is in the OTP flash, so it's a one-time programmable memory it's a chip inside the device. Like the name says, you could only write something into this chip once, and you can't modify it, you can't remove it. So when you boot up your Coldcard, that same number appears on the device screen, and it should be the same number on the bag. So right away, this is in case someone intercepts your device from the distributor, from the shipping distributor or whatever, and they swap it out. Already at the bag too, it's the tamper evident bag. So if someone unseals it, I mean, you're given clear signs. You can't like vacuum seal it back or whatever. But let's say you do. Yeah, you can't swap out devices without already the numbers being different. And then you need to choose your pin. So this is a very important process. The way Coldcard designed its pin process is instead of just having one pin, you actually have kind of two pins, or one split in half. So you have a prefix and a suffix, each being 2 to 6 digits in length. The purpose of this is, again, if someone fiddled with your device or inserted a Trojan device, or we will also call like an evil maid attack, where you have a stranger in your house that messes with your stuff or notices, you know, what you're doing. Oh, this guy's in Bitcoin. Let me try and swap out a chip or change the device or whatnot. So basically, when you enter the first part of your PIN, 2 words appear, which we'll call anti-phishing words. And these same 2 words will always appear whenever you enter the first part of the PIN correctly. And you also have a green light that gives you like, go. It's safe to enter the second half of your PIN. So
because you've written down these words priorly, so you would be able to compare your device. And what makes it specific to your device? Is it an entropy within your device that, like, or is it why if someone changes the device and you enter the same words, is this a protection method? Like, what's the difference?
So the PIN is tightly integrated with the secure element. So trying to modify, well, already you can't really access the secure element because essentially it's a question of sharing secrets between each component within the Coldcard. So between the various secure elements, the MCU, and other little components, and like the lights and whatnot. So everything is tightly integrated in itself, and each step of the process, each step of like information exchange within the device is done through, let's call it like cryptographic handshakes. So if your key is off by 1 bit, like everything, it doesn't work, right?
Right.
So if anything's off, again, by 1 little byte or bit, you know, you can't really go forward. And also, okay, so like this is the PIN. Let's say you set your PIN. You got your digits. Ideally, you remember your anti-phishing words. Another little trick that could be useful in case something does happen that hasn't been perceived in advance. Like you can just hit, let's say, 11 when you're entering your prefix, and that's not your PIN, right? This is just a test to see what those anti-phishing words are. Because if somehow, you know, someone swaps that memory, like they figure out what your anti-phishing words are, right? Let's say it's boat and banana, and they manage to enter your device somehow, very unlikely again, and they can reproduce whenever you enter your prefix those same boat banana words. But if you enter 11 the first time you set it up, and you know that the words tied to that PIN is apple and, you know, car.
Okay.
Next time you enter 11 and it doesn't, apple and car doesn't show up, well, now you know, okay, shit, someone.
Okay, so the specific identification of the secure element will answer the phishing words to a specific prefix.
Right.
And if someone is able to game that and reproduce a Coldcard that will give you the same answer for
that specific
your prefix, you could enter other data and check if it's based on other prefixes.
Correct.
So when you set it up, you could not only write down the anti-phishing words for your prefix, but for other random numbers, and you could test that as well. So because the odds of them gaming both or like multiple prefixes and multiple phishing words is basically none too impossible.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Okay.
Also to note, like, since we're talking about secrets here, if you enter the same PIN into a different Coldcard, you're going to get completely different words. Just for those of you out there that think, oh, okay, I'm going to import my wallet, my old Coldcard wallet into my new Coldcard, well, and you use the same pin, well, it's not going to be the same anti-phishing words. So
right, because of the identification associated to the secure element.
Right. So the way secrets are shared and stored within the device.
Okay, so now you've entered your prefix. Now what happens when you enter your suffix too?
So after you enter your suffix, the device clears. Well, actually, the first thing that the device does is, actually, I'll get back to this later, since right now this is the first time we're initiating the device. But normally what would it do is, once you enter your full PIN, it checks in the second secure element whether it's a trick PIN or not. So a trick PIN is anything like a brick mode or login delay or
right, specific features associated to other pins than your main pin.
Exactly, because the main pin is used to log into your wallet, and then you have trick pins that are used in case someone is trying to coerce you into unlocking your Coldcard.
Yeah.
So, but let's say this is the first time you're entering your PIN, you confirm it. Now you're on the home screen, and this is where you use the device to actually generate your wallet. And you have a few ways of doing it. Typically, people will just use the device itself to generate the randomness that's necessary to create a private key, or your 12 to 24 words that protect your Bitcoin. But you also have the option actually of, and let's say like you don't even trust Coldcard that they're using, or you don't trust their providers of secure elements or the microcontroller. Yeah. You can bypass all of that and just use dice rolls instead. And you can verify the math independently, on your own, whether the Coldcard is not tricking you into thinking that it's actually taking dice rolls, but instead it's using words that are pre-stored in the device and whatnot.
Right.
Everything is verifiable. So that's another neat feature. You don't trust, verify, and if you don't want to trust really any components, you have options, right? So it's depending on how.
Okay, so if you created, you have the option to create your seed phrase with dice rolls, which is an entropy you add.
Right.
But if you don't do that, if you choose to just follow the device, how does the device entropy work?
Right. Because, entropy is something that's observable in nature. Entropy being, the degrees of randomness that we can, kind of keep track of. So like we just mentioned, you have mechanical entropy, which is dice rolls in this example, but it can also be a coin flip, or you're playing Russian roulette. The odds are different. But to have a high enough amount of randomness, high enough amount of entropy, it takes a lot of physical input. You need to roll a lot of dice. In this case, you should roll 100 dice to achieve 256 bits of entropy, which is already the standard in pretty much everywhere, in most places, I would say. Whether it's like your credit card or military uses or, Bitcoin.
For sure.
So essentially the way this works is you have in the microcontroller, the microcontroller and both secure elements both have what's called a true random number generator, which uses a mechanical process, but it's much more scalable than just rolling dice, because you have a little oscillator in each chip, which is an electrical component that vibrates depending on the frequency and the amount of the frequency and the charge of electricity that's going through it, and it's also dependent on the external temperature in the room you're in, and the way it's positioned, the angle you're holding it and whatnot. So it's very sensitive, and basically this thing vibrates very fast, a lot, and each time it vibrates, let's say up or down, while your bits are recorded, so either 1 or 0. So you have a bunch of ones and zeros that are generated, and this is again very long string of ones and zeros. Then this long string of, like I just said, binary digits goes through what's called a whitening process. So this is to make sure that your device is not biased as well. So let's say for some reason your secure element or your microcontroller is generating a larger, like 90% of the digits that are generated are zeros and 10% are ones. Well, the whitening process basically runs everything through SHA-256. So it's secure hash algorithm 256 to remove the bias. So now it's 50-50, just in a random order, but the proportions, everything's like proportional right now.
Okay.
And then, so there's a lot of steps, but basically you have the microcontroller that generate this random string, right? And it's been whitened to remove bias.
Yeah.
Now what you have is both other secure elements that create a random digits as well using their true random number generators.
Yeah.
But then those are seeded or fed through what's called a pseudo random number generator, which is an algorithm instead of a mechanical process to generate randomness.
Okay, like code.
Yeah, so it's still, you know, secure, but it just has different applications. It's much faster to generate randomness using this. The difference is that if you want to crack this, you need the starting seed, so the initial like parameter to generate this randomness. But that's provided by the secure elements. It's just that moving forward, it's a pseudo randomness that's used anyway. So you have those two extra sources of randomness that are combined with the other source of randomness from the true random number generator and in the MCU, and that's encrypted the whole way through. Again, using 256 bits, so it's like the highest standard. Well, one of the highest standards of encryption, and then that's stored in the secure element number 1. Now, secure element number 1 basically.
Wait, let me stop you right there.
Yeah. Okay. Went through a lot.
So I just want to recap that part. Okay, so basically what happens is when it creates your seed phrase, it first begins at the microcontroller with its true random generator or something like that, and it uses electrical, mechanical, like physical input to create real randomness of 256 bits, and then it passes through a whitening process, something like that you said, where it just matches the amount of zeros and ones it has so that it's proportionate.
It removes bias. Yeah.
It removes bias. Okay. And then what do you mean by bias? Like when if let's say I would game the electrical input,
in a sense,
or if I would game the temperature, something like that,
or the device itself,
or the device itself does it. Okay, so it removes bias either from an external input or from the device itself just by random bias. And then this is the part I'm not sure I got. Okay. So then the other secure generators also have true random generators,
right? Okay,
so and then they produce some entropy, and then they pass through like a pseudo. They get combined with like pseudo randomness, something like that.
So you have seeds that are generated using the secure elements that are then used for the pseudo random number generator found in each device respectively as additional sources of randomness.
Okay.
And then all of this is put together. Everything's whitened, goes through that whitening bias removing process throughout.
Okay, it's for everything.
And then once everything is like put together, it's encrypted again using a 256-bit key, which is the kind of encryption you see when you want to go on secure websites like HTTPS, your credit cards.
Yeah,
I mentioned this before, right? And then, all right, so now your private key is stored in the secure element. Why isn't it stored in the MCU? Is because the MCU or the microcontroller is not designed to be tamper resistant. It's designed to, manage your electrical stuff your programs, your softwares and whatnot, but it's not designed to be resistant to like lasers or like side channel attacks or various other attacks that secure elements are specifically designed for to protect against. But you don't want to trust that your secure element is still undefeatable, right? So that's why it's encrypted beforehand, before putting it into the first secure element. The only way to decrypt it is you enter the correct pin, and then through a very complicated process of cryptographic handshakes and whatnot, you essentially obtain part of the decryption key from the MCU, part of the decryption key from the second secure element, and this first secure element also has part of that decryption key. And only once like all the checks are made, like nothing has been fiddled with, no circuits have been manipulated, no wrongdoing has been detected basically, and the cryptographic proofs between each chip has been provided, only then that the private key is decrypted to be accessible in your device to sign transactions.
Okay, so what you're saying is, okay, first let me wrap up the other part, which I think I got. The entropy basically is true random generators in each component, MCU, secure element 1, secure element 2, boom, physical entropy, whitenet, like the process of whitening, where they like you remove the bias, either like external or just physical bias, and then it gets all packaged together, and then it's like rehashed, and it's like true like pseudo like entropy, right? The hash is like pseudo entropy, something like that.
No,
I just didn't get what pseudo entropy.
Okay,
what was the play of that?
So that comes into play. So you have the secure elements each generate a starting seed for the pseudo random number generator, also found within each secure element.
Okay.
And then that's used to generate entropy.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so it's before. It's before. Okay, it's before. Okay, and then it.
So basically, you just have entropy for generating your private key is seeded from 3 different sources.
Yeah, I understand that.
And that's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
now
just
let's
the kind of randomness that is used varies from chip to chip.
Right. Okay. So now, once the seed has been created, it's gonna be inserted in the secure element 1, and it's encrypted.
Right.
And so and let's say you turn off the device, and now you turn on the device, and it's still encrypted because you haven't entered your PIN. But as soon as you enter your PIN, I understood that to decrypt the seed phrase, you need like keys from each component. But can you explain how you go from entering the PIN to getting those different keys from each component? Like, does the PIN unlock one device, and that device unlocks one component?
Okay.
Like, explain that part.
So when you enter your PIN, it first checks in the secure element number 2 whether or not it's a trick pin, because that's where the trick pins are stored. It's in the secure element number 2, and it's not it's not likely, but it's not the end of the world if it's leaked, because what are you going to do with a trick pin, right? Other than like brick the device or whatnot. It's defensive measures, right, that you're going to activate at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So the MCU asks secure element number 2, okay, is that a trick pin? MCU says secure element number 2 says no. And during the process, they exchange secrets between themselves to authenticate themselves to one another, and a connection is established. Okay, they validated themselves to one another. Because when you set the pin, also that's when there's a secret within the MCU that's determined by the pin. So already you have a secret there. Next step is, okay, is this a valid pin, right? So MCU checks with SE1.
Okay.
SE1 answers back. He says yes or no, right? If it's no, you don't log in. You get error attempt number 1.
Okay, so the secure element 2 knows the secret pins.
Trick pins.
Trick pins. They already have like a pre-established communication channel that is like with handshakes to make sure it's the right party that's communicating with it. It's kind of like that. And then once it finds out it's not a trick pin, it goes and talks to the first secure element, because that's the one that knows what the real pin is. And if it's not the real pin, well, it just doesn't answer, or just boom, denied.
It activates the error message.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if it is, what happens?
That's where, again, you have this exchange of secrets between each component. And if if secure element number 1 validates itself to the MCU, then the MCU, then they share that secret with one another to establish that connection. And then you have the process of getting part of the decryption key from SE2, combining it with the one in the MCU, and then getting part of the secret of the other part of the decryption key in the secure element number 1, and then that's used to like open up secure element access to the private key held within secure element number 1.
Okay. So when the secure element number 1 answers, it is the real pin. It answers with some sort of a key that you could unlock what the secure element 2 has as its part, and what the MCU has, and what what each one has, to then get the key to decrypt the seed phrase that is found in the secure element 1.
It's a cryptographic messaging system, basically.
Okay. I think I got it.
All the details are in the article.
Okay.
I'm not remembering.
Where can people find the article?
Just go on blog.coinkite.com.
Okay.
And it's one of the first ones there at the top.
Okay, awesome. So woof, that was a lot. So
yeah,
that's really interesting. I really like the way you explained it, honestly.
Thank you.
You did really good. So now I just wanna. So now we've talked about the entropy. We've talked about this different parts of each device. I don't want to talk too much about the passphrases. Like we can do this maybe another time.
Sure.
So I just want to know what.
Oh, but just to mention.
Okay, go ahead.
Earlier we were talking about different hardware wallets and their vulnerabilities, even with the older versions of the Coldcard. But all of those vulnerabilities can be mitigated using a passphrase. So even if someone cracks into your Trezor or manages to get the $200,000 laser to extract your PIN, if no one has, because the passphrase is never stored on the device. It's, because there's no such thing as an invalid passphrase. Anything you add to your main seed will create a new BIP32 wallet. So if you have a passphrase already, you eliminate a whole bunch of risks.
Right. Okay, so I guess that's basically the ultimate fail safe, right? Where like if everything else fails, which honestly would be so hard to figure out.
Yeah.
How to make like both secure elements and the MCU fail in the Coldcard's case. But if it all fails, if you had a passphrase, you're not compromised because you have a passphrase. If your passphrase is complex enough, right? Because just inputting 3 digits isn't.
Yeah, I mean, someone can always try and brute force it.
Yeah, exactly.
So like guess a bunch of times what it is using specialized computers. But I mean.
So if you buy a Coldcard and you put on a passphrase, that is impossible
for me, that's like one of the best setups out there.
It's incredible. I totally agree. Okay, so I finally understood what makes the Mk4 so special, and different from other hardware wallets that have secure elements as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, their newest product that's available.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that. So tell us about what's it called already? Q1, I think.
Q1, yeah. Okay. So it's basically the same security architecture as the Mk4.
Yeah.
And the way I understood it also is that they're not going to discontinue the MK series because it's very much wanted and desired by people in the industry in general. This is just like a new line of products because it has a few different features like a QR code scanner. So if you want to, scan an address to make sure it belongs to your wallet, or you want to send funds to someone, and you want to scan it that way instead of sharing it online or whatnot. or through other communications.
Yeah.
What else? It has the QWERTY, the keyboard on it, so it's very useful if you want.
It's like a complete keyboard.
Yeah, it reminds me really of like the old agendas from like the early 2000s.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
kind of looks like a BlackBerry also.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a BlackBerry. Okay, so it's just that it's the same technology basically behind with the QR code scanner.
The underlying security is very much the same.
Okay.
But you also have the benefit of it being battery powered, so you don't need to plug it into anything. You can just have a bunch of batteries. And it also has slots for 2 micro SD cards, so you can use one to insert, your air-gapped PSBT, your partially signed Bitcoin transaction that you created.
Yeah.
You can sign it, and then you can export that signed transaction on the separate, micro SD. What else? Has a flashlight for better scanning. I have to play with it.
So it's mostly physical features, right? Such as the QWERTY, the camera, probably a bigger screen, right?
Yeah, bigger screen too. A better like display.
A keyboard, better display. You said like a flash for your camera, basically, like a phone. Battery, and something else. Was that it? And more, I can imagine it has more memory too.
Not
sure. Not
for sure. Okay. Already the Mk4 came with more RAM, more pseudo RAM.
Yeah.
So essentially that allows you to sign more complex transactions, larger transactions. But that's what comes to mind right now.
Okay.
I'm sure there's others. I don't think they disclosed everything yet.
Right, and the 2 micro SD slots. Right. So yeah, you mentioned that. They didn't fully disclose everything, you think?
I think most of it's out there already. But then again, what can we display ordinals on the screen, for example?
I don't think that's gonna happen. Okay. It's I'm just checking right now because I really wanted to get everything.
It's the same. It's practically the same price as the Mk4, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's the same price. That's interesting.
Maybe a bit more.
Okay, so the screen is 4 times the size of the Mk4. It's the wireless, the battery powered, which is really interesting. That feature I really like. The QR code scanner with LED illumination, advanced scanning algorithms, and serial interface. You know what I think would be an interesting topic for an article that you could write, or just something that the company can communicate further, is because they write here QR code scanner done right.
Done right. Yeah. And I wonder who they're referring to.
Yeah, because they've criticized other companies in the past. So I really want to know why is it done right? So
yeah, because actually one of the main criticisms of the scanner I've heard before is that it's not human readable, right? I mean, who can read a QR code? So now you're trusting the device to make sure that, it read the QR code properly, or even if it did, that it didn't manipulate any of the information. So it probably has to do about something around there, like the way messages or secrets are shared. I don't know. I need to look into it more.
Yeah. Definitely, it says advanced scanning algorithms and serial interface, right? So I guess the answer is partially there. Okay, cool. So before we end, we're nearing the end, but not so yet. So I want to know. I think we've wrapped up on that topic, on the Coldcard topic. Unless you had anything else to share, maybe you could tell us what other subjects you're gonna look into, if you can share publicly, or anything.
I mean, I have started a Substack. Now I'm working on populating it. So a few subjects that have piqued my curiosity is diving more into the world of entropy and potentially its impact. I mean, the way it evolves and its impact on Bitcoin. Because like I mentioned, we're using, it's called a true random number generator, but it's limited to physical processes of things that are observable, maybe under the microscope or not. Whereas, you have the whole world of quantum mechanics that's, being more and more explored, and that offers new realms of generating entropy. Because instead of it being like a mechanical thing within a chip, like an oscillator that's going back and forth, it can be, heat being emitted from something like a chip, or like radioactive decay. And analyzing those particles, and each time that particle moves in a certain direction, that's when you hit 1 or 0 to create your string of digits.
That's cool.
That's really cool. Definitely very curious about that, and interested in writing about that. I mean the list is long of stuff, of things I want to write about.
Okay, that's really good. I'm really interested in that topic too. So if you ever learn about that, quantum entropy sounds cool, right?
You have quantum number generators, but they're just not that commercialized yet.
Okay, I'm sure they're not, right? Because it's crazy. But whenever you learn more about that, publish some work, we'll have you again, so you can explain that. I'm sure a lot of people would be interested to hear more about that.
Sounds good.
Okay, so just general Bitcoin question. Any Bitcoin development that excites you besides what we've talked so far, right? Anything new, or just in the tech world as well? Can you just ramble a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, lately, ever since the whole AI thing started, I've been playing a lot with the tools there. Very fun.
Do you use open ChatGPT to write your articles?
No, it's all original, but it does help if you know how to use it right in brainstorming. I think that's really useful because, well, actually more or less, because I generated several lists of ideas. The main issue is that it's not as much up to date as I want it to be, and it steers clear of anything controversial.
It's kind of dumb too. Like, it repeats itself.
It's pretty dumb.
Because I asked it the same thing. I was like, topics around, like, ideas for articles around this topic, or sections of an article for this topic, and it kind of repeats itself. Like the first 5 answers I'll give you are pretty diverse, but then you'll just ask it, okay, can you share some more, and it would just repackage them.
Right.
Like,
because I'm very curious to see what it might think of topics that people might be curious about but aren't nearly enough documented, or just not very mainstream. If it'll save me time, doing all the research about discovering new things, and just like blurt out, a list of like very obscure technical stuff, but it's super basic. Like, I've been really disappointed on that front.
I think the Bing one, what's his name again? Sydney. It can do stuff like that because it's connected to the internet. It's like ChatGPT 3.5.
Yeah, that one I'm more excited about.
But they just announced they're gonna like block it.
Oh, really?
I think it's like max like three questions in a row, and then it resets.
Oh, so it doesn't keep track of like.
It doesn't keep track of past conversations because it goes crazy. You've seen how it like.
I've seen
it will give you orders, or like it will
really
get mad at you. It will like try to manipulate you. Yeah, it's very weird. Yeah, well, but I think that will have some answers for you that you'll like.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to write like marketing copy and stuff like that, it's useful. But if you want to write a research paper, I wouldn't recommend it. Again, I mean, it can help structure ideas and stuff, or brainstorm to a certain point. But then again, like, it's nowhere near writing, a book or stuff like that.
For sure. Okay.
Other than that, like DALL-E, Midjourney, like text to image stuff.
Yeah, because you do design as well.
Yeah,
you use that.
That's really fun to see what kind of output I can get. It's very hard to like create what you're picturing in your mind, and then you're putting that through like a computer. So you do have like interesting results, but at least I get to play with it, and I can always modify those images,
nice.
How I want to afterwards, right? Have my own creative input.
For sure.
So that's been cool. Else more specific to Bitcoin. Kind of been taking a step back, honestly, because I've been seeing a lot of debates going on around ordinals and whatnot, and I didn't really get involved in that because that's not why I use Bitcoin. So I don't really, and I don't think it's the worst thing ever. So that again might be a controversial opinion in and of itself.
The NFT stuff.
Yeah, the whole NFT thing.
Yeah, I talked about this with Magic a bit on the first. I agree.
Yeah.
I don't think it's.
But there are some other interesting developments that I need to look into. Some that already have been mentioned like in the past, but have kind of faded away and like are coming back, such as drive chains. But
Yeah.
you might know a bit more about that than I.
Honestly, I haven't updated on that either. Lately I've been reading about OP Vault.
Oh right, okay.
Vaults and like covenants.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's gonna.
But there's a bit of controversy again.
Do you think that has the potential to change the world of self custody and custody?
It definitely does, but like in a complementary.
Okay, it's not like a 0 to 1 kind of change.
No, it's and that's the purpose. Like covenants would be 0 to 1 in the sense that they're very flexible.
Okay.
This is one specific covenant. It's a vault, which allows you to set a delay period when you make transactions, so that you cannot send funds right away. You have to make a request of moving funds, of like, and like a timer starts. Let's say it's 24 hours. 24 hours later, only you can move the funds away from your wallet in the specific way you specified, like in the trigger withdrawal transaction.
Okay.
So it's a delay period basically, and that just helps in the situation where you get hacked or your Bitcoin gets stolen, so that the hacker cannot access your coins right away. It's basically the only use case. It's really about the delay period, and also you have an address, you have a recovery path, which allows you to sweep the funds at any time. So let's say you detect that a hacker is trying to withdraw funds from your wallet.
They initiated a timer or something.
They initiated a timer. You have 24 hours to act. But if you have access to your recovery wallet, you can initiate the recovery wallet and the recovery method, and that one happens instantly. So within that window, you can recuperate your funds.
Right.
And that's basically what it is.
It's on-chain security measures versus hardware. Or
exactly. It's on-chain custody policies.
Okay.
That can be implemented at all the levels, either hardware or just software. But this would implement it on-chain very specifically. Very small change, 2 OP codes, very simple. Shouldn't be very controversial, but everything is. So we'll see. Okay, cool. Okay, so now we're kind of done. So where can people follow you? Where can people read more about your work?
For sure. So across my socials, I use pretty much the same handle everywhere. Which is Tristan Borges, Tristan, Borges with 2 S's. So it's Borgess. Also, so that's Twitter, Substack. If you're someone that uses LinkedIn for some reason, it's the best way to find me, to look me up. Send me a message if you want to chat. More than happy to connect with more people in the community, discuss ideas, get work commission, whatnot. I mean,
awesome. And what can people go to you if they need like articles that they want to be written? Sure. What do you have to offer? Make a little pitch right here.
Yeah. So you need a technical concept to be vulgarized, whether it's how your product works or your software works or how something works in Bitcoin, whether on-chain, Lightning, new developments, other BIPs. Really, that's kind of my realm of, that's really what I've been focused on for the past 4 or 5 years. It's everything related to Bitcoin and hardware and some software stuff. So yeah, whether it's a short article, a research paper, you're curious about developments, or if there's are any interesting correlations to be made and you have theories you want to test out, it's my bread and butter.
Technical writing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone that's listening, if you're looking for a technical writer, you know where to find him. All right. Thank you, everyone. This was a very fun chat. Learned a lot. I hope you guys did too. See you next week. Well, we're gonna have a friend of mine. He's I won't disclose his name. He lives in Puerto Escondido, and he's trying to run to launch a Bitcoin startup. And we'll get all the details in the next episode. So make sure to tune in, recommend this podcast, and share it. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Tristan.
Yeah, thanks, Gustavo.